Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Michelle and today we are going to make a caramel apple pie. Today is my husband's birthday. I've actually never made a caramel apple pie before. I love making pie and I make apple pie, just a regular crumb apple pie. But today we're gonna make it with a little bit of caramel. So you're gonna hang out in my kitchen with me. Be a fun video to put up on my channel because I love to bake. It is my stress reliever. It is fun for me. I enjoy it. Plus, there's always something good to eat at the end. All right, so I'm going to start with the caramel sauce. This recipe is from bigbluebowlrecipes.com. I will link it in the description box. And I am going to use this recipe. She actually has a pie, an apple pie recipe that I found this recipe within. But I really like my apple pie recipe. I am just implementing her caramel sauce into my current recipe. So in the pot right now I have a cup of sugar, and according to her recipe you cook this over medium heat, stirring constantly so it doesn't burn. She also has a note in here that at first it feels like nothing's happening and then it'll start turning colors and you'll actually see it start to cook down. Okay, so you can see it's starting to change consistency a little bit. It's getting, definitely finally getting melted down. All right, you guys, we're getting somewhere. I'm starting to also understand why my sister said she doesn't want to make homemade caramels every year. This is a lot of work. She always makes my Christmas and they're so good. But I see why she's like, I could step back from it. Chunks are almost gone. Once all the chunks are gone, we're gonna add 6 tablespoons of salted butter, and it's cut into chunks. She does say in her recipe that if the chunks aren't gone and completely liquefied, that you will have issues with your caramel not turning out properly. So make sure you really whisk them out. All right, I think we got them all out. So once that's completely melted, you're gonna add the butter and we're gonna reduce the heat slightly. So I'm gonna add in my butter and reduce my heat. Okay, so now that the butter has completely melted, we're going to move the pan from the heat and slowly add the heavy cream. And then once we got all the cream mixed in, we are going to put it back on the heat for just a minute to let it thicken back up, and then it is good to cool. All right, we are now gonna move into the crust. For the crust, it is 1.5 cups of flour and a ½ teaspoon of salt. So I already have that all portioned out. And then we also have a ½ cup of shortening. So I'm going to start by mixing this together. I use a pastry cutter. We are slowly going to add in our cold water. I keep an ice cube in my cup just to make sure the water stays extra cold. Now I'm just going to use my hands to start working the dough and see if it is getting to the point where I can start forming it into a dough ball. I'm going to use the rest of my water. Alright, time to roll out the dough. I'm going to flour my surface. in my ball of dough. Put a little flour on there. Now I use a weighted marble rolling pin. I keep it in my freezer. It works better that way. Now, to get my crust into my pie sheet, I roll it up on my rolling pin. Put my pie plate in. Lift up the crust. And roll it right on. All right, at this point, I'm now gonna flute the edges. If I get my crust in really nice and I have enough extra, I will fold it under and do a true like fluting. But this one I have it just wide enough on the edge that I'm just gonna go through and start shaping it. And fluting is where you pinch the dough between two fingers and then use another finger to shape it into this. You can use like the edge of a fork. I just really like the look of fluting. I think it looks really pretty. All right, there's my fluted crust. I'm gonna set this aside and work on the filling. All right, so for the filling, you need 8 tart apples, and they need to be pared, cored, and sliced. I am using Max today. That's what I found at the grocery store on a good deal. And I don't always use tart apples. I actually prefer sweet, but these are gonna be a little bit more tart, which is totally fine. Ben prefers tart apples anyways. After I get the excess cut off, I cut these into quarters. And for me, that is the perfect size to cook down so that the apples are still there but not completely applesauce. Okay, time for the filling. So we have our apples, and then in here we have 2/3 cup sugar, 2 tablespoons of flour, and 3/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. And we're gonna sprinkle that over everything. And I just use the same bowl that I made the crust in. Multiple reasons, less dishes to wash, but also I like, when I bake, if I can, I like keeping everything within the same bowl because then all the flavors kind of go between them all. And it just makes everything, in my opinion, it makes everything taste better. So we are gonna let this sit for just a few minutes, kind of let all the juices from the apples mix in with the dry ingredients. And while that is happening, I'm gonna make the topping. Okay, we are gonna make our crumb topping. Our crumb topping is a 1/2 cup of flour, 1/4 cup of sugar, and 1/4 cup of butter. So I like to use my fingers and just kind of mix these two together, the flour and the sugar. And then we're gonna add in our butter. And I like to use my hands and break apart the butter. It gets a little bit more crumbly that way. But you do have to act a little bit faster because the heat from your fingers will melt the butter. Okay, so we are going to finish off with the filling. So we have our apples that have now set with the dry ingredients, and you can tell that they are definitely more juicy, which is great. That's what we wanted by letting it sit. Now we're gonna add in a 1/2 cup of the homemade caramel sauce. You guys, I just tried this because, you know, quality control. Oh my God. It was so much work, but I'm like, I could do this again, but it was a lot of work. My husband is very lucky because I would not just make a caramel apple pie for anybody with homemade caramel, that's for sure. All right, so we're gonna mix this together. And I'm doing a 1/2 cup based off of the recipe that I found the caramel sauce on. That's what she does. She uses a 1/2 cup of caramel. And then the remaining caramel is gonna be used to drizzle over the pie when you slice it up and eat it later. All right, we are back with the crust. We are going to put in our filling. And we're gonna go in with our crumb topping and cover the top. This is going to bake in the oven at 400 for, the recipe says 45 to 50 minutes. Mine's usually in there for an hour. I think I go a little heavy on the apples because I just like to have a lot of apples in my apple pie. So it just takes a little bit longer, and obviously depending on your oven will also determine how long it takes. All right, you guys, this is what the pie looks like when it's going into the oven. And this is what it looks like when it comes out. And here is the final product, dished up with homemade caramel sauce drizzled over the top and whipped cream. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.